Sir, your voice is not audible, sir.
Are you able to hear now? Lahiri, are you able to hear? Others? Are they able to hear? I don't know. That's what. She was saying she was unable to hear. Now it's okay, fine. But again, it's for her, it's coming off, na? Let's approach in there. Working? Okay, okay, okay. Chalo. Yeah. So, as I was trying to tell to you, very importantly, what is very important is when you are on a chapter, you will encounter a lot of words. Like on the first slide, the three important words that you're going to remember is what is called as diversity, what is called as evolution, and what do you understand by biosphere. Please know how to pick up meanings of sentences of these particular words. So on one side, we are catching words and moving. Catching words and moving on a chapter is just like the sort of steps of a ladder. Remember, you're holding one word. You put 10 words together. From 10 words, you will get 20 objective bits. That's what I'm saying. So you got to understand that primarily all the entire biodiversity is because of evolution of 3.5 billion years ago. That is, evolution has occurred in time. Remember, it has occurred in time and in space. Evolution has occurred in time and space for 3.5 billion years ago, and thereby what happens is you have so many sort of a species. The number of the world species is 1.7 to 1.8 million. So sometimes what happens is you got to remember numbers. I'm not saying you got to remember every number on earth. No. Remember all the numbers which are present in your textbook. Only that, don't overload yourself with relation to something else. So I hope are you clear on this particular thing? Exactly. This is very simple because I was just only primarily revising on things. Okay, we go on to this. Okay. Now, yesterday we had primarily gone into, we should go up. We can go up. Does it go up? I don't know. Oh. Huh? This one only. Okay. No, we'll just go on. Now look here. Now the two important scientists whom you got to remember is we got Theophrastus and we got Linnaeus, which is very, very important. Theophrastus and Linnaeus are very, very important. So when you take Linnaeus, primarily he's called the father of taxonomy. He is called the father of systematics. And he has written a book called Species Plantarum, 1753. Now this is very important. And again, Systema Naturae, 1758. And he introduced the term binomial nomenclature. Introduction is different from who discovered it. He introduced it, the pattern of a study which is called as binomial nomenclature. And he had also written a book called Genera Plantarum. So this is nothing but you got to just remember. We don't have to do anything about it. Only you got to only primarily remember that Linnaeus is called the father. Now, supposing Linnaeus was the second point. He is called the father of taxonomy. He is called the father of systematics. He introduced Species Plantarum. The year is 1753. You got to keep marking like this. Then Systema Naturae. Then 1758. Then he introduced primarily binomial nomenclature. And again, he is also associated with Genera Plantarum. So that means there are about A B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Remember, so many things are associated with Linnaeus. So anything can come in a sort of a competitive examination. Are you understanding? See, when you're studying, you should ask yourself, how much of time, how much of energy you're going to put with relation to studying why. That's very, very important. And you have to store it on. That's very important. You've got to store it on your software. That's very important. So parallel to this, we had even Theophrastus. Now, Theophrastus was something like 370, 380, and he has primarily studied Historia. Remember this, Historia Plantarum, and he is primarily called the father of botany. Theophrastus is called the father of botany. Now, very rarely they ask these sort of questions. Historical, very rarely they ask because we live in a sort of a very modern world. Anybody would like to maybe ask a sort of question on maybe a Nobel Prize, then asking something belonging to the 18th century. But because you have read it, even in an examination, if it just comes in, you've got to put it on memory. Somewhere at the back of your mind, it should be there always. So remember, on every particular chapter which you're reading in for the next maybe 6 months or something like that, for every chapter, there's something called historical, there's something called as terms, there are something called as concepts. And when you take the concepts, the main purpose here is I'm trying to help you with relation to understanding the concepts. Ante knowledge. Knowledge and understanding is what we are doing in a classroom situation. You're going to take that knowledge and the classroom, knowledge and understanding, and you're going to primarily practice on with relation to a lot of questions. That is applications. So knowledge, understanding, and applications are all part of the same thing. So unless you practice, you can't really get to. Remember, like supposing you think, okay, like you think we are not going to come to Linnaeus again. I say Linnaeus is associated with Genera Plantarum, binomial nomenclature, Systema Naturae, 1758, 1753, Species Plantarum, systematics, taxonomy. So after you read something, please go backward and think. Stop for a while, think, and then go. There's no big hurry. There's no big hurry at all. So what happens is we got to change the pattern of how we are reading. Little bit, you got a little bit of shift in attitude towards how you're reading. That's the only thing which you got to primarily do. Okay, next we come to the topic of what is called taxonomy. The objective of today's class is you are learning something called what is taxonomy, what is nomenclature, what is classification, and all that. So that in one more class, you're going to read on binomial nomenclature. Remember, your classes are scheduled like this. Each chapter is scheduled for about some 6 days. If it's a priority chapter, it will be taught for 10 days. If it's a more important priority chapter, it will also be taught for about some 15 days. Some chapters can be taught in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Some can be taught in 6 days, 8 days, and 10 days. Some in about some 12 days. That's the way, depending upon the in-depth or the terms and the sub-themes of the sort of a chapter. So supposing we take taxonomy, the term taxonomy has been given by De Candolle. De Candolle, small d, De Candolle. He introduced the term taxonomy. Now, what does taxonomy deal with? It deals with a scientific study. Many times in an objective, you may just be thinking it is only study. It's not study, it's scientific study. There's a particular rationale of scientific study. Maybe one of the days I'll tell you what is meant by science, then it's very easy for you. So what does taxonomy deal with? It deals with principles. So there are some basic principles. Remember, there are some basic principles, some basic objectives, some basic statements, principles, and also there are methods. When you say processes, what does it mean? Processes means methods. There are some basic principles and processes out of how, by means of which, what happens is scientifically, you can primarily, what you can do is you can characterize a plant. That is, you can give the characters. You can say, how is the calyx? How is the corolla? How is the androecium? What do you mean by characterization? Characterization means all features of the part. If I take androecium, I'll say stamens, I'll say pollens. Then I'll say, how are the sacs? I'll say, how is the connective? Where it is located? Is it attached to the petals? Not attached to the petals? What is that sort of a number? Are they free? Are they united? If you take gynoecium, primarily gynoecium means primarily it's made up of carpels. How many carpels? Mono or bicarpellary. Then is it united or free? Syncarpous or apocarpous? How many ovules are present? How is the sort of a placentation? These are the basic things. If you just look at the floral diagram, you know the particular things. So to arrive at that particular floral diagram, you got to know, you got to be good in taxonomy. You should do the first step, which is called as characterization. So when you do characterization, what is it? After you study a particular plant, whether it's a known plant or an unknown plant, after that, you need to identify the plant. This is very, very important. Identification is very, very important. You need to identify it. Supposing I give you a sort of a plant in which there are no flowers. Think I am giving you a particular plant in which there are no flowers. I'm saying, how does it belong to Fabaceae? How does a plant belong to Fabaceae? The plant belongs to Fabaceae because first thing is, if you touch the roots, what do you get? Root nodules. Remember, it has got root nodules. If you take the stem, what is the most important thing? The leaves are attached and the leaves have got a pulminate leaf base. They've got a pulminate solan leaf base. Remember that. And if you take the leaves, how are the leaves? Bipinnate compound leaves. Bipinnate compound leaves. So just on the 3 characters, which are non-floral characters of Fabaceae, they can ask you these 3 things. Supposing they say only fruit characters, legume. If you say only flower characters, raceme. Raceme, and it's also racemose. And again, how is it? When you take the particular flower, you understand the flower is papilionaceous. Papilionaceous means it is vexillary estivation. You got a standard, you got 2 lateral wings, then you got alae. Wings are alae, then you got a bottom 2 petals are united, which is called keel or carina. So vexillary estivation, papilionaceous corolla, racemose, raceme inflorescence. When you take the stamens are diadelphous. 9 united and 1 free. And you got a sort of a curved gynoecium. That's all. Beyond this, the fellow is not going to ask you anything primarily with relation to Fabaceae. So Fabaceae is just 5 or 6 minutes. 10 points down there, and you got to look at how to know, you got to know how to read the sort of floral formula of the floral diagram. So that is what is primarily called as characterization and identification. Now, you know primarily how to identify. Supposing I say Solanaceae, I say tomato. What is the fruit of tomato called? It's called a berry. It's called a berry, remember that. So, you know what is the difference between a tomato and a brinjal? In a brinjal is also a berry, but what happens is in a brinjal, what happens is the calyx is persistent and is green in color. We take the brinjal, primarily what happens is it will have a sort of a calyx. This is the calyx of the brinjal. Whereas when you take the sort of a tomato, it's not very, very significant. It's just tomato is just like this. So this is the persistent calyx. This is the persistent calyx of a brinjal, the green colored structure. Or supposing you take a sort of, so you should know how to identify, there are easy ways of how do you identify plants. So identification is one step. Then nomenclature. Giving the name is called as nomenclature. Giving the name, like supposing you say Solanum tuberosum, potato. Solanum nigrum, brinjal. Then, primarily, like supposing I say capsicum annuum, it is chilies. So the best way for you is, because you are reading now here, you are reading nomenclature, just try to make, just like a sort of an assignment, take all the names of the plants which ever are present in your NCERT book, all the names of the plants, make a checklist, like a shopping list. Write the general names. Try to know whether you can write the botanical names. If you do not know, I'll help you out. Simple. So always what happens is, on one side, you're making a vocabulary list. Remember, it's just like you're going for a war. When you go for the war, what happens is you're well trained. So the first thing is you have vocabulary lists. Like what were the vocabulary lists? Like biodiversity, I told you, taxonomy. Like from this, what is the you'll write one word, which is what is called taxonomy. Then next word you'll write is identification. Next word you'll write is nomenclature. And you've got about some 6 words till now. So similarly, we are also going to be picking up on, primarily on the names of plants and all that. Now, very important for taxonomy is, whenever you take taxonomy, remember, how do we get on the color? Huh? Okay, this color is fine. Oh, yeah. So it goes this side, that side, and what side? So for taxonomy, remember the basic unit is called the species. Species is the basic unit. Cell is the basic unit of life. What is the basic unit of taxonomy? Is the species. Why species should be called the basic unit of taxonomy? Because a species is capable of interbreeding among themselves to develop fertile offsprings. When you take species, it evolves in time and space. So you got to remember that the basic unit is what is called the species. Again, on species, you'll be learning a lot of things more with relation to species in evolution, primarily in zoology and all that. So you got to understand what is the meaning of, supposing someone says, what is taxonomy? At least immediately what should come in your mind is Decanter, scientific study, and principles and process, characterization, identification, nomenclature, and classification. So remember, what is very important is you should not be carrying too much of overload of the data on your head. You should only remember like this. Then it's going to be very, very easy for you. Okay. Next slide. We go into the next slide. Let's go. Now we are going into what is the meaning of the term systematics. Systematics and a systematic arrangement. Systematics. Life should be very systematic. Remember, supposing you are reading science, sun rises at a particular point and moon rises at a particular point. Supposing one day there is variation, what will happen? That means always what happens is in all living organisms and always on planet Earth, there is always the movement is from disorder to order. Disorder to order. If you take human beings, you take plants, you take animals, we have biological rhythms. We don't sleep during the day, we only sleep during the night. Remember, that's a normal rhythm, biological rhythms. So similarly, what happens is when you take plants, even when you take plants or any living organisms, we have one branch of science, which is what is called as systematics. We have one branch of science, which is primarily called as systematics. So what does systematics primarily deal with? What does it deal with? Systematics primarily deals with it is the systematic arrangement of things. That is, you're doing it in a sequential order, putting things in a sequential order. After A, you get B. After B, you get C. After C, you get D. That's called sequential order. So in systematics, what happens is the term systematics has been primarily given by, has been given by Linnaeus. Linnaeus termed, the term has been given by Linnaeus. So you should know all these particular things. So when you talk about systematics, it deals with diversity. Remember in the first slide, I showed you what is meant by diversity. It deals with diversity. It deals with diversity, and it also deals with evolutionary relationships. Now, what do you mean by evolutionary relationship? Supposing you take any particular plant, there are primitive characters. Remember, there are primitive characters. And again, there are advanced characters. There are primitive and advanced characters. Like if you take the family, like if you take family Asteraceae, remember, if you take Asteraceae, Asteraceae is otherwise called as, Compositae. It is otherwise called as Compositae. In family or Asteraceae or Compositae, you got the head inflorescence. You got the head or the capitellum inflorescence. The head of the capitellum inflorescence of Asteraceae is an advanced character. Is an advanced character. Are you understanding? All the flowers are present on the head. So supposing you have a plant, think you got a head inflorescence, you got a lot of flowers here. When an insect comes in primarily for pollinating this, it can primarily pollinate all the flowers at one time. So the flower has co-evolved with insects. That's an evolutionary character. Whereas supposing you take wind pollinated plants, they are all very, very primitive. Insect pollinated are supposed to be more advanced. Are you understanding this? Anemophilous pollination and waste, all the pollens will get primarily wasted out. So here what happens is, again, you got to primarily understand is, when you're talking about diversity, we are talking about evolutionary relationship, and we are talking about primitive and advanced characters. Along with primitive and advanced characters. So what are we dealing with? We are dealing with something called as phylogeny. Phylogeny means primarily you're reconstructing the sort of an evolution, which is very, very primitive, which is very advanced. Another technical word which you're reading is what is called phylogeny. Phylogeny is one technical word, systematics is one technical word, taxonomy is one technical word, diversity is one technical word. So on one side, you're catching all the technical words. On the other side, you're looking at statements and trying to understand what you're doing. So you got, again, whenever you're dealing with systematics, it deals with comparative study. It deals with comparative study. Supposing you think you got an algae called A. How is algae when compared to algae B and when compared to algae C? Are you understanding? So you're going to do a lot of comparative studies. So what always systematics is comparative study. What is the goal of systematics? Why should people do systematics? You're trying to reconstruct phylogeny. You're trying to reconstruct. Reconstruct means supposing what is a very old bacteria, what is a very new bacteria. Like supposing you take the case of COVID virus. COVID virus genome sequencing is similar to which other virus? From where did the virus come? I'm talking about the sequence of the RNA. What is the first sequence of the COVID virus and where is it? In which virus was it? And from where it has evolved till today? So primarily, remember like that. So what happens is we have got primarily, you got to reconstruct the phylogeny. You're going back in time and checking maybe which is the most primitive molecule, which is the most primitive gene sequence. You're reconstructing. Supposing there's a missing link in the evolution. In evolution, think, okay, we had once upon a time, we had, say, a COVID virus, something like alpha. And that suddenly got lost in time and space. Everybody know only about COVID virus, which is beta and delta. But what happens is we do not know about alpha. So the thing is, again, you want to reconstruct. You get from some evidence and then you can construct it. So primarily classification, remember, as I told you in the last class, this is a very important statement. It is not, we are not trying to do classification versus systematics. Classification is an integral part of systematics. Systematics is a big science. Classification is a small part of it. It is one small chapter in the big book, which is called as systematics. Are you understanding? So it is not like classification versus systematics. That's not. Classification is just only a procedure. But what is the goal of most of the biologists in the world today? The goal of most of the biologists in the world, whoever are doing taxonomy, what is the goal? The goal is systematics. You don't simply name a plant. No, you don't simply characterize, name a plant. What is the goal? You're trying to look at from where it has come. What is the origin? How it is related? So origin, relationship, phylogeny, evolution, all is equal to systematics. So in an objective, when they say systematics, immediately these words should keep on going in your mind. After learning all these things, again, you should not go and say, no, it is something like classification. I do not know what is the difference between classification and systematics. So in today's world, what happens is when you take systematics today, we have something like we got different. When you take taxonomy or even when you take systematics, new systematics is called as biosystematics. Biosystematics is new, and it's also called as new taxonomy. Biosystematics is also called as new taxonomy. Remember, biosystematics new taxonomy has been proposed by Simpson. Very rarely asked, but still, you got to, while you are reading, you got a link near that particular thing. How long does it? I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time to exactly know what is the meaning. Supposing you get interested in things, you'll remember things. Always biosystematics is Simpson, and it's also called as neosystematics. Now, when sometimes what happens is, so we are learning about what is the difference between systematics and taxonomy. So we are talking about something called as classical taxonomy. Classical. Once upon a time, 18th century, 1850, 1860, 1870, 1880 is classical taxonomy. Classical taxonomy is also called as alpha taxonomy. First, you got alpha. Alpha, beta, gamma, omega, rho. You got to remember all these particular things. So you'll be learning all this alpha and all that in biomolecules, even when you're looking at proteins, enzymes, and all that. So primarily it deals with morphology. Classical taxonomy always deals with only morphology. That is based on only vegetative characters. Remember, based on what? Based on only vegetative characters. It is only based on morphology, is only based on vegetative characters. And vegetative characters can change. So once upon a time, people did not have microscopes. I mean, they did not have microscopes. They could only go observe some things. And what they observe is what is called as primary vegetative morphology. Remember, that's called as vegetative morphology. So when you practice this, what happens is you only look at a species and say the species is static. Species will not change at all, according to a lot of people. We'll say humans don't change. We got a lot of conservative sequences within ourselves. If you take our human DNA, we got, say, 80% of the DNA is conservative. Like what we got from very, very long time, it only stays. Only little bit of change is there, like how we are writing on a digital board or how you are reading on a computer. There's a little bit of change which we have. So mostly what happens is a species, if you say a species is static, and it's also typological. You know, supposing I say bacteria, you'll say E. coli. I say primarily mammalia, you'll say Homo sapiens. Primates, you'll say Homo sapiens. So supposing I say Solanaceae, you'll say primarily tomato. If I say Fabaceae, you'll say Pisum sativum. If I say Liliaceae, you'll say only lily. So they get typed. Okay, you'll only be studying one particular thing. So in classical, in alpha taxonomy, what is very, very important for you to understand is all the characters, whatever you're primarily seeing here, all the characters, whichever you're trying to primarily see over here, they are all only morphological, typological, and static species. These are the characteristic features of alpha taxonomy. When you take alpha taxonomy, it is only species is static. It is typological. It is only morphological. Now, when you take taxonomy, whereas when you take biosystematics, in biosystematics, the term biosystematics has been a lot used by a scientist called Julian Huxley. Huxley uses the term biosystematics. And when you take systematics, you take evidences from all branches of science. From all branches of science. What do you mean by all branches of science? Like you take cytology, you take biochemistry, you take physiology, not only morphology. Remember, Evidence, supposing I want to classify a particular plant. Think I want to classify an oil seed plant. So in an oil seed plant, what can be present? There could be lipids. There could be oils. There could be terpenes. There could be flavonoids. There could be other sort of compounds. So all those compounds, I'm taking biochemical evidence for that particular sort of an oil seed plant. Supposing I want to study wheat, or I want to study rice. You think if I want to study rice, starch. If I want to study wheat, proteins. Where are the proteins present? In the aleurone layers. Which are the different type of proteins which are present in the aleurone layers of wheat? I'll take that. So primarily what happens is you can primarily study from evidences from all branches of science. And whenever you're dealing with biosystematics, you would be studying natural groups. Those which are present in nature, natural groups. You're not doing any artificial construct. You're only doing natural groups. And this is a very, very dynamic concept. Like I'm getting an evidence from a microscope on a Monday, and on a Tuesday, I look at the same thing under an electron microscope, I get better evidence. On Wednesday, I do the DNA sequencing, I get better evidence. On Thursday, what happens is I'm trying to do something else. I'm going into the gene sequencing and exactly knowing which gene is very, very important. So it keeps on changing. So always remember biosystematics is a dynamic concept. So in biosystematics, what happens is you look at what happens between species, between two species, what other characters can you get? Intra, not inter. Not species versus species. It is intra ante within the species. Within the species, are there any new characters coming in? Are you understanding this? So what are we doing? How are we changing primarily our pattern of reading? Our pattern of reading is going away from superficial reading to deep. We are reading something in layer, deep, 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 connecting issue to issue to issue and going into the sub-issue, sub-issue, sub-issue. Whereas what happens is, most of the time, unfortunately, what happens is we read spread out. We read all kind of things. We read 200 things about an issue. That is not necessary at all. Instead of 200 things about an issue, what we are doing is we are reading an issue right from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till 100 instead of reading it from A to Z. Are you understanding? We are not reading about anything like this. We are reading it deep down and we are going deep down and again connecting it. Very, very important is connecting. You're breaking things and again you're connecting things, breaking things and connecting things. So that's a method of science. So primarily what happens is in a very informal way, I'm teaching you the method of science. Simple as that. So any doubts still here? Anybody here? Yeah. Simpson was primarily a sort of a scientist who primarily is associated primarily with biosystematics. Julian Huxley first determined this. Then Simpson primarily what happened is he was the first person to link up primarily biosystematics with primarily biodiversity. The word biodiversity and biosystematics, the link is primarily because of Simpson. Now, see, sometimes what happens is I just told in the passing, maybe Simpson should be related to biodiversity and maybe biosystematics. Mostly with relation to biodiversity, correct? That's it. Okay, let's go. Now, there are different steps in taxonomy. Whenever you take any particular subject, supposing you're reading a chapter of photosynthesis, respiration, protein synthesis, or molecular biology, there is a particular method of how you go to read. One glove does not fit all, no? What? Supposing you want to read in the same way like how you read reproduction, you want to read taxonomy, it won't work. So that is why whenever you're reading any particular concept, it's very important that you got to follow what is the pattern of how you read. So when you take whenever you're reading on steps in taxonomy, what are the basic steps in taxonomy? First important thing is you have is what is called as characterization. You have what is called as characterization. Now, what do you mean by characterization? When you say characterization, it means primarily description. What you're doing is you're describing. Supposing without describing, how can you identify? Think you're gone into the western. Think you're gone into the tropical rainforest or into the Western Ghats. There is a tree there. You're not going there with your book. You're going over there. First thing, what you will see? First thing, when you enter a forest, you will smell. Is it aromatic? Next, you look at the wood. The wood is hard or is it soft? Then again, when you look at the particular wood, you look whether it is porous, because that's what you see. So depending upon the wood, whether it is thin or thick, or whether it comes out or does not come out, whether it is sticky or non-sticky, you can classify plants. Depending upon the leaves, you can know how, you will draw the leaf and then you can exactly know about things. So always, whenever you do characterization, you need to describe. How do you need to describe? Not according to what you like. There is a description should always be scientific. The description should be scientific. Remember, for plants, you got the semi-technical description of a plant. That's very, very important. You got the semi-technical description. You got the semi-technical description of a plant. So first important step is characterization. That means primary description of all the things. Like you're trying to describe the habit, the habitat, the vegetative characters, the root, stem, and leaf. Then you go to the floral characters. You're going to describe the inflorescence, flower, calyx, corolla, androecium, gynoecium, and the fruit. Total description, which should be primarily, as I told you, it should be scientific. It should not be non-scientific, and it should be in a particular order. Remember, because taxonomy comes under systematic. Systematic means systematic arrangement. So you got to go follow a particular order. That is very, very important. So first thing is it should be scientific, and second thing is it should be in a particular order. You can't be describing first the flower and then the root. It follows a particular method. First, you got to finish the vegetative characters, then you come to the sort of floral characters. Then afterwards, the second step is what is called as identification. Now, what do you mean by identification? The correct scientific name. The scientific name is very important in identification. You can't give a sort of a, remember, vernacular names are not vernacular. Remember, vernacular or local names are not preferred. Supposing you take the case of chili. Chili is known by different names in different states of India as well as in different parts of the globe. If all of them meet together and each one try to describe it, it will just be like 9 blind persons trying to describe a sort of an elephant. Isn't it? So you won't know. So that is why you require primarily scientific names. Always scientific names are very important. And remember, all scientific names should be underlined. Otherwise, it's not valid at a later period of time. Always scientific names should be underlined when you write it. So next, it should be identified with a scientific name, and the scientific name should belong to a particular taxonomical group. If supposing I say Saccharum officinarum for sugarcane, or I'm using the term Triticum aestivum for wheat, or I'm using the term Oryza sativa for rice. Otherwise, I'm using the term Brassica campestris for cruciferae. It should belong to cruciferae. When I say Oryza, it should belong to Poaceae. If I'm saying Cajanus cajan, that is red gram, it should belong to Fabaceae. So it should belong to one particular taxonomical group. It should not be I'm giving a botanical name and we do not know where to place it. Remember, see, each of us have got our own names, and we have got from the places from where we come is also there a part of our name. So it should always remember, always binomial nomenclature. When you're talking about identification, what is the group and what is the scientific name, are the two important things. So after you finish characterization, after you finish identification, then you got what is called the next step is primarily called as classification. So what happens in the case of classification? You classify means grouping. First, very important thing is classification, and the word which comes primarily in an objectivist, it's just, you're just grouping. Classify. So you're into what is called into taxonomical categories. You know what are taxonomical categories? Kingdom. I mean, you got kingdom, division, kingdom, class, order, family, genus, and species. They're all different taxonomical categories. So you're grouping them into taxonomical categories, and you remember taxonomical categories, or also the basic unit is what is called a taxon. The basic unit is what is called a taxon. Later on, we will also be learning, maybe in the coming classes, you will learn what is meant by a taxon. What is the basis? The basis is the criteria is the basic criteria is the character should be easy and it should be easily observable. The character which you're studying, you should not, I mean, you can't classify plants based on, or you can't say, I know the DNA sequence, I'll classify it. It should be easily observable. Remember what you see in the field. So it is primarily based on what is called, it is primarily based on field data. It is based on field data. Primarily, it is based on field data of how you describe a plant in the field. Supposing you have seen a particular plant as a crop in an agricultural field, you take that character into consideration. So it is primarily based on characters which are easy and observable. And remember, classification is grouping of taxonomical characters, and it is put in a particular sort of a hierarchy. What do you mean by hierarchy? In a particular order. Remember, supposing you're going to write like this: kingdom, class, order, family, genus, and species. You're going to write it in a particular sort of an order. So this is called hierarchy. Hierarchy means in different levels. From the most complex to the most simple. From the most complex to the most simple. Sometimes even from the bottom to the top. Later on, I'll tell you like what is meant by how to put things in the correct sort of a pattern. That's called as hierarchy. So hierarchy means steps. Remember, hierarchy means steps. Each step is called a taxonomical category. The taxonomical category is also called a taxon. And taxonomy and hierarchy both are very, very important when you're talking about steps in taxonomy. Simple. Are there any doubts here? Anybody there for online also? Okay. Now we come to what is called as nomenclature. Now, whenever you put a name for a plant, like see, supposing you think I'm writing, say, what you just tell me any name. Okay, you got Brassica campestris. If you are writing Brassica campestris, the name should be distinct. It should be clear. You should not have one sort of a name which no one else has got that sort of a name in the world. Remember, imagine you think if each one of us have got names which are so different that there's no second person with the same name. It'll lead to a lot of confusion. So it should be very, very distinct. Distinct, and it should be a lot more clear. It should be a lot more clear. Distinct means clear. And it should be standardized. It should be standardized. That means a committee will primarily sit down and say, okay, this is the accepted name of Rhizus oryza sativa. The accepted name of primary tomato is Solanum tuberosum all over the world. Irrespective of your religion, irrespective of the place of origin, irrespective of religion, anywhere, wherever you go, if two botanists or two biologists meet, they'll say, okay, you're growing Solanum tuberosum, even I'm growing Solanum tuberosum. Fine. So it should be standardized. That is very important. First, they should be standardized. Otherwise, if everyone wants to put their own names, then there will be a lot of confusion. So it should be distinct. What are the basic rules of nomenclature? Before you put a name, it should be distinct. It should be standardized. According to, remember, this is codes, CODES. According to certain codes, not this, according to certain codes of nomenclature. There are some codes of nomenclature. There's a specific norm. When you say code, what does it mean? Code means there is a specific sort of a norm. Now, what do you mean by norm? Norm means some procedures are there. So, always nomenclature follows rules. So, whenever people start following rules, they find life is very, very difficult. But scientists primarily follow rules. Remember that. There are some basic rules. There are some basic regulations. And only certain things are allowed, certain things are not allowed. Regulation. There are some basic rules, regulations, and also there are some recommendations. A committee will sit and say, okay, this time we don't want the name to be Solanum tuberosum, we'll have something else. Then again, after 6 months, they'll come back and say, no, Solanum tuberosum is very good. Let's not have the new name. It's very, very difficult. So they'll regulate it. It's like supposing you discover an unknown plant. This is very important with relation to unknown plants. An unknown plant is discovered, and the plant is named according to on the name of the sort of a discoverer. If a plant is named after the discoverer and the discoverer's name is a very big name, then all over the world they can't pronounce it. They can't write it. So that is why what happens is they have some recommendations. So supposing you take the word, in those days, you take the word as what is called Linnaeus. Now Linnaeus was very difficult to remember. So that is why what happens is they are abbreviated it as what is called LINN and put a dash. You write it as like this, and then you put a sort of a dash after the name. Are you understanding? So here what happens is they go through rules, regulations, and recommendations of what is called of an international code of botanical nomenclature. So there's an international code of botanical nomenclature which is very, very important. And it primarily believes in the formation of a scientific name. So if you want the scientific name, you should have ICBN. And if you want ICBN, they should have recommendations, rules, regulations, and rules. And if you want recommendation, regulations, and rules, there should be a particular code of nomenclature. And the code of nomenclature should be standardized and distinct. Please try to read every particular slide up from the top to the bottom. Give some time and again read it from the back to the top. Then it gets into your mind. It's very easy for you to understand. And beyond this, don't go with relation to chasing out any other sort of a new terms and all that. All over the world, people who are reading primarily on nomenclature will only be knowing about these. And this is what is primarily called the sort of a concept of nomenclature at the +2 level. Simple as that. Let's see what we have. We could still 10. Let's see what we have. I do not know. Okay. Now, what are the other things which is required for nomenclature? It should be easily recognized. It should not be difficult. When you're putting a name, it should be the plant should be easily recognized. Supposing you go into a jungle and find one rare plant among the 1.7 million species, you're finding one species and think it's the most important plant. It should be easily recognized. You should be able to it should have been characterized. When can you put a name? Only when it is characterized. Remember that. Only when it is characterized. And it should be universally accepted. Remember, this is very important. It should be universally accepted. Supposing someone comes to India and gives you a sort of a Chinese name and a Japanese name, what will happen? Original name itself you can't take in. If it's given a Chinese name and Japanese name, what happens? You lose your head. Remember. So it should be universally accepted. And normally what happens is it needs to follow a particular pattern, which is what is called as binomial nomenclature. So that is why what happens is we have introduced the sort of a binomial nomenclature. Because only two things, that's very easy. Now, when you're talking about taxonomy, there are few things more, little bit. Like there's one branch of taxonomy, which is what is called as numerical taxonomy. This is very important. There's a branch of taxonomy, which is called as numerical taxonomy. Nowadays, if you take all molecular biologists, you take all biotechnologists, you take anybody who's working on genetics and all that, what is the modern wave? The modern wave, which has started somewhere in the 1970s, is what is called as numerical taxonomy. In numerical taxonomy, what happens is, in numerical taxonomy, you take all morphological characters and you take all morphological characters in consideration. You deals with also taking all characters, which is called as phonetics. It takes all characters into consideration. So what happens is, this is wrong. This is not right. I'll check on this. I'll tell about this in the next class. Like when you take in numerical taxonomy, what happens is you take large number of characters. Supposing I study a bacteria. In a bacteria, I'll take 1,000 characters. I'll take 1,000 characters of a bacteria, right from how is the membrane, how is the plasma membrane, how is the flagella, how is the DNA, how is the mesosomes, how is the mitochondria, how is the how are maybe the sort of how is the electron transport system, how is the cytoplasm, what is the name of the enzymes. I'm taking all the characters, large number of characters, and I'll code them. Supposing it is gram positive, I'll put 1. Supposing it is gram negative, I'll put 2. Supposing it does not show any stain, I'll put 0. Are you understanding this? Supposing you think I'm taking a virus, and in a virus I say it has got a sort of a double stranded, it has got a single stranded DNA, I'll put 1. I'll say what happens is it has got a more primitive DNA, I'll put 2. If it has got an advanced sort of an RNA, I'll say it has got 3. So what happens is I'm taking the characters, I'm coding them. Coding them like what? Coding them as 0, 1, 2. That is what is called as binary. I'm only using binary characters. So I'm taking 1000 characters and putting it on your computer. And exactly on the computer, what happens is I'm putting all the characters as 0, 1, and 2. Are you understanding this? So it's called binary. So binary. And very, very important is when I'm feeding onto the computer, the 1000 characters are all important, all are equal. All the characters are equally fed into a computer. Every character is very important. DNA is the most important. At the same time, the size of the leaf is also very important. Both mean same. I cannot distinguish between, I'm just feeding. Okay, the leaf outline is oval. Then I say DNA is circular. Both are important. So it's all equal characters. So what happens is you have something called as operational taxonomical units. We have something called as, they are made up of operational taxonomical units. It is called as OTUs. You got OTUs. OTUs are always used in the case of numerical taxonomy. So here what happens is when you feed it onto a computer, so the data is fed onto a computer, remember that? And what happens is you develop something called a sort of a numerical algorithm. Matching. How much of nearness of all the characters are there, how much far the characters are spread. So supposing the characters are all near, supposing you think I have a data and I have more data on photosynthesis and I've got less data on respiration where the characters are all matched between, I think I've taken about some 5 plants and I'm looking at all the characters, I'm feeding the characters into a computer and many characters come related to photosynthesis and few characters come related to respiration when I'm feeding on a computer. So what happens is I develop an algorithm, that is I say, okay, these characters are very, very important. Which is all primitive, and which is all advanced from here. That is called a natural algorithm. So you're taking binary, you're looking at numericals, you're developing a natural sort of a algorithm. And by this way, I can very easily know which are all primitive characters and which are all advanced characters. So this sort of a numerical taxonomy is used today in all bacterial classification. So numerical taxonomy is supposed to be a modern science. Remember, numerical taxonomy is supposed to be modern science. Because nowadays what happens is like, how do you study numerical taxonomy? Like, you think you don't have to really go into a tropical rainforest also to study things. What happens? You take a satellite imagery. You'll take a satellite imagery of a big sort of a tropical rainforest and you'll just zoom it down. Exactly, you know how you'll get the sort of how is the canopy, what are the plants. You can easily identify, supposing you use infrared radiations. And once you take that database will exactly capture what is the name of the species. And from the name of the species, immediately you know how to characterize. And you can go, and later on, after you feed the data, you'll go into the field to check. So a lot of things are there with relation. You should remember numerical means primarily it's a sort of a very advanced sort of a taxonomy. Remember that. That is very important for it just to start at the beginning. Okay, wait a bit. Yeah. Next we go to what is called as chemotaxonomy. In chemotaxonomy, taxonomy which is based on evidences from chemical studies. Chemical compounds. We are looking in terms of what are the sort of a chemical compounds which are present in plants. The basis is the presence of the chemical compounds. So most of the chemical compounds are what are called their pigments. What are the pigments which are present in plants? Chlorophyll A, B, C, D, E, carotenes and xanthophylls. Next, we are talking about tannins. Supposing you take tamarind. From tamarind, you can get tannins. When you cut an apple with a knife, you get tannins, brown phenolics. Tannins are watercolors. They're basically tannins are okay. They're also called as phenolics. So you can classify plants based on tannins and phenolics. And also there are some compounds which are watercolors beta cyanins. Beta cyanins. No, this is not there. Beta cyanins. These are coloring compounds. And mostly what happens is you can do taxonomy based on secondary metabolites. You remember secondary metabolites in the chapter of biomolecules? You got tannins, phenolics, pigments, compounds, terpenes. Terpenes very important. You got primary terpenes. Then you got gums. So like this, what happens is you have to know what are all the secondary metabolites. So any relationship you're trying to develop wherein you're only talking about the evidence from secondary metabolites or pigments or others or tannins, etc., that particular study is primarily called as chemotaxonomy. So like, supposing you take a particular family, you will have a lot of flowers and all the flowers will be of different pigments. Many flowers are there, yellow, red, blue, green. So flowers also, they change on the basis of that pigmentation. You can easily classify plants. If you take beetroots, if you take carrots, in the plant kingdom, you got a lot of diversity of roots, stem and leaf and flowers and inflorescence, and on the basis of color. So on the basis of color and on the basis of other metabolites, what are primary metabolites are carbohydrates, proteins, fats. Secondary metabolites, other than the carbohydrates, proteins and fats, are called as primary secondary metabolites. So I would be stopping down here. Maybe we'll continue about with relation next class. So next class we'll be doing about whatever happens after chemotaxonomy as according to the sort of a syllabus. Fine, I'll just sign out here. That's more easier for me. Fine. So how do you stop this now? Binary ante 2 characters together. This one I escape, huh? No. How do you stop it? How do you stop it? This? Okay.